Fox News likes to ask the question, does Obama actually love America? Sure, it's a silly question, but it gets their base riled up over nothing. But recent activity by Congressional Republicans shows that the GOP may actually be the party that's trying to take down America, as well as drag us into endless warfare in the Middle East. For more on this, let's go to Howard Nations. So, Howard, we have 47 Republicans that have sent this letter over to Iranian leaders. Tell us what's going on. What's the purpose of this letter? Who did it go to? What in the world are these Republicans trying to do?
Well, I think what you see with this letter is the end of an era. It's a 70-year era of bipartisan cooperation with respect to foreign affairs. It's always been the rule that the President of the United States Executive Department conducts the foreign affairs of this country. It goes back to in 1945, 70 years ago, when Senator Arthur Vandenberg, the Republican from Michigan, who was a staunch isolationist, he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. But rather than opposing what Truman wanted to do after World War II, he gave what was acknowledged then as the speech heard around the world because it had worldwide implications. Senator Vandenberg said, "We must stop partisan politics at the water's edge." In other words, leave it to the executive to conduct foreign policy. The result of that bipartisanship was the Marshall Plan, the formation of NATO, the Truman Doctrine, which protected Greece and Turkey from going communist, and it created the modern European face that you see today, which would be considerably different if you had not had that bipartisanship. And the irony of it was that domestically, after doing all that in Congress, Harry S. Truman successfully ran against that Republican Congress as the do-nothing Congress and won re-election. You can only imagine what Truman would call today's Congress. But in that last 70 years, there's only been one instance of somebody interfering, and that was Nixon in 1968, who as a presidential candidate secretly communicated with South Vietnam while Johnson was in negotiation with them to try to end the Vietnamese War. It destroyed the deal, and the war dragged on for 7 more years. Nixon clearly violated the Logan Act, which prohibits American citizens from communicating with foreign governments to conduct foreign policy.
So this letter from the Republicans, does this violate that Logan Act?
It doesn't reach that level. I think the consensus is it doesn't reach that level because they did it publicly. If they had done it in private, if they had done it secretly the way Nixon did, it would be a violation of the Logan Act. But it comes very close. But they sent a letter to the leaders of Iran, lecturing them on what our Constitution says. It was signed off on significantly by the Republican leadership and by potential presidential nominees Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Rand Paul. The goals of that letter are to kill the agreement, to pressure President Obama into giving some control over the process to Congress. And it was interesting that they lectured the Iranians on our Constitution when in fact the letter gets the Constitution wrong. Yeah. A Harvard law professor who was a member of the Bush administration says that it's an embarrassing error in the letter, especially he's embarrassed since Cotton got his law degree at Harvard. But it fails to mention that the threat to withdraw from an agreement would violate international law. And the interesting thing is Iran's foreign minister is the one who pointed that out and had to educate the Republicans in the Senate regarding our Constitution.
That is so funny. The situation itself, not funny at all. But the fact that these Republicans who always talk about needing to defend the Constitution, let's protect this Constitution, leaders in Iran, the country that they would be more than happy to go over and drop bombs on today, know more about the U.S. Constitution than a Harvard law graduate who is a Republican congressperson.
And the
That
other
is
40
crazy
and the
to
other
me.
46 senators who signed off on the same letter.
Exactly. I mean, but that just goes to show. I mean, these Republicans will say anything to get elected. They know just saying, let's protect the Constitution. It's a great talking point. It means nothing. There is no
Totally.
substance behind that statement at all because it means absolutely nothing. The only president in recent memory to really go against the Constitution was George W. Bush with the Patriot Act and destroying all those freedoms. But back to these war hawks, because I think part of what is happening here is they don't want an agreement. They know an agreement on any kind of nuclear deal is going to stifle the ambition that they have had for decades now, which is pretty much endless war in the Middle East. And Iran is the next target. We've already, destroyed pretty much most of Iraq, but now ISIS is marching through Iraq and Syria and all those places. So they're chomping at the bit to get some ground troops there. And let's face it, they want another war with Iran. I think John McCain, with his little famous Bomb Iran song, really spelled out Republican foreign policy for us.
Yeah, they did, and there's no question that that's where they're aiming. As a matter of fact, this is all about the neocons' effort to get back into power. The neocons led us into Iraq with their lies, and with the major lies being those that were set up by the Cheney, for example. There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction, and he's amassing them to use against our friends, our allies, and against us. Fast forward now to last week when Netanyahu is addressing the Republican, on invitations from the Republican addressing Congress. Iran is developing nuclear weapons to use against us and our allies, especially Israel. No need to negotiate. You notice one thing's missing. One thing's missing. They want to kill this. They want to kill this treaty. They want to kill this agreement, but they have no alternate plan. No alternate plan, because the alternate plan is the only remaining option, which is war. That's what they're trying to get to. So the neocons are just at it again. And the question is, has America learned nothing from 12 years of war?
Well, that's a great point. There is no alternative plan, just like with everything else with the Republicans. Let's get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Okay, well, what's your plan? Well, we don't have one. Well, let's get rid of Social Security and welfare. All right, what do we replace them with? Well, we don't know. They don't know. And Peter King, a Republican, not that great of a guy, no offense, but he actually had the nerve to come out and say recently, we're not dealing with responsible, mature adults with these Republicans in leadership now. And when you have somebody like Peter King say, these people are not acting like adults, there is a problem with the party. And I've been very hard on Obama because it's not my job to be a cheerleader. It's my job to hold accountability. But he is dealing with what I see to really be the largest, he's running a daycare. That's what Washington, D.C. has become with these Republicans. It is a daycare. You almost expect to see them drawing with crayons all over the Constitution and just climbing up the walls. It is very, very scary that these people are leading this country, and I'm terrified about where they're leading us. Well,
this is more than just disrespect for Obama. This is now disrespect for the presidency itself. This is just the latest in a series of acts of total disrespect. Wilson calling Obama a liar during the State of the Union address, blatant interference with foreign policy, domestic policy also. Mitch McConnell recently wrote an editorial in which he says that states should refuse to comply with proposed rates on greenhouse gas emissions. EP regulations, which have the force of law, so you have the majority leader of the Senate calling on states to disobey the law. And then it continues over on the House side, where the House Speaker invites a foreign leader, Prime Minister Netanyahu, to address the Congress with the express purpose of criticizing the President of the United States on foreign policy and derailing foreign policy negotiations. So it goes further than just disrespecting Obama. Now they're disrespecting the presidency, and that's why I think we're at the end of 70 years of bipartisanship in foreign relations.
There are no more gentlemen. There are no more adults at this point. And That's the Republican Party. Howard, thanks for being with us today.